Yes, this is Commissioner Michael Sharp.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. July 27th, regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The invocation will be by Commissioner Irving and Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the minutes. You're right, it is August 10th. Sorry about that. Wow, back in time we go. Can we go back that far without COVID though? Anyways, Commissioner Babb will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do apologize for the delay. We had a little bit of an issue before. So, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hopkins, Commissioner Yocum,
Here.
Vice Chair Sharp,
Here.
Chair Huggins,
Here.
Commissioner Irving, here. Commissioner Frank,
Here.
Commissioner Babb.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Approval of the minutes from July 27th. They were kind of lengthy. You got the additional corrections that I stated?
Yeah, but for the record, could you list those out? The two that we talked about just
Okay.
now?
The additional, after you guys after we got the email, there's an additional change. 4.1, where it says Chair Huggins agreed to remove part-time resident requirement from the code. That should actually state Deputy Director Rudy or Rodolfo. That should be changed. And then underneath there, where it says that mistake was fixed by the consultant needs to be capitalized. The only other thing that I had suggested was the word approval on 4.2, where it stated BR on YouTube states encourage approval. The approval was spelled incorrectly, but I was pointed out that that was exactly how it was typed on. I had suggested putting the word SIC next to it. So maybe some sort of notation on the minutes so that we don't look like we typed the.
Sure.
So those were the only changes that I had. Anybody else?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. All right. We don't have any public hearings. We do have 4.1. The commission shall hear a presentation from staff on the city long-range transportation planning discussion only. I'm going to assume this was at the direction of, because we had asked for it at the last meeting. Thank you for listening to it.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as requested, we have Joshua Plum, our city engineer, here to kind of give a quick synopsis or general overview of the city's long-range planning. He'll give you good information on what the city's been doing over the past 15-plus years as it relates to the city's transportation needs in the city, and just give you a general overview in terms of the questions that kind of came up last week or the previous meeting as well. But Josh is here to kind of give you information. Feel free to ask any questions at this time as he presents. With that being said, Joshua Plum.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Joshua Plum, as Rudy said. Thank you for coming out tonight just to hear me. I'm honored. I am going to go through, I've got about 16 slides to get through tonight. Try and be respectful of your time and get through it reasonably quickly, but I also get very excited about this and I want to move on to the next thing. So if I do go too fast, please slow me down. Happy to take as much time as you like on each slide. Peter, I'm going to ask you to, if you could pull those slides up for me here, please. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about two elements of our long-range transportation planning process, and that's the area transportation plan and our traffic impact analyses. So our area transportation plan, which I believe you received a copy of from Rudy, is a 2015 plan that identifies all of the road networks within the city with milestones for build-out at 2020, 2030, 2040, and then build-out for the city. That transportation plan is an update of a 2008 regional transportation plan, which itself is an update of a 2005 small area transportation study, which was more focused on the city of Maricopa. The regional transportation plan and the area transportation plans looked outside of the city a little bit more than the small area transportation plan, so that you could see what the impacts were to traffic within the area. Generally speaking, it is a long-range master planning document for us that allows us to determine how our roads are going to be built. It supports the general plan and our land use patterns. The data, a big piece of the data that goes into developing the transportation master plan, the area transportation plan, are these TAS maps, these traffic analysis zones. These are recognized countrywide as a planning tool to develop master plans. And what they do is they project socioeconomic conditions within specific areas within regional analysis zones, which are in part of larger master planning areas. And so you can see on the map here that the city is broken up into many different TASs within the incorporated Maricopa as well as within the planning area of Maricopa. This also shows that when the master plan was put together, it takes into account portions of the Casa Grande planning area. It also takes into account regional routes such as 84, I-8, 347 obviously, which is our major hub, and 238. This is just an example. Actually, let me go back to this really quickly here. If you look at just north of Maricopa Casa Grande Highway, 2609, and I'm sorry I can't point to it with this, but 2609 and 2614, they're either side of Porter Road. 2609 is bounded by Porter Road on the west. It's got Bolin Road on the north, Maricopa Casa Grande Highway on the south. 2614 is bounded by Porter Road on the east, Honeycutt on the north, and Maricopa Casa Grande Highway on the south. And I bring this up as an illustration of the information that comes through the planning organizations for these specific TAS IDs. Population estimated for 2609, which was the smaller one bounded by Bolin on the north, 3,030 individuals. This is at build-out for City of Maricopa. Estimated 9,230 employment there and 1,075 dwelling units within that block. And then 2614 is the other side of Porter Road, stretching a little bit further north, 6,350 estimated population there with an employment base of 2,620 and 1,950 dwelling units. Yes, sir, Commissioner Urban. This data is projecting build-out for the city. So really, the analysis of the city of Maricopa is 2020, 2030, 2040, and then beyond. So anticipating full build-out once we've incorporated all of the planning area of Maricopa, which is everything shown in the yellow there. This is projected build-out. At what is in the general plan within the planning area for Maricopa.
Can-
So, from changing the zoning, this numbers may not be accurate based on what we're changing.
Yes, that's correct. It is possible that the numbers would change, the projections on that. If we find a higher employment base, then we end up with fewer residences. If we find more residences, then a smaller employment base within that area. This,
Madam Chair, reminder for the commissioners, please unmute. Please put on the mics when you do speak, because we can't hear you.
Sorry, I
There
do
you go.
apologize.
Go ahead.
Did you need me to repeat anything?
You may want to, yes.
I want to?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Michael. So I guess what my question, or not question, say, question or dilemma is the fact that when we're looking at zoning and we're looking at the information that you're providing, you being the city staff is providing to us on these rezones, we're looking at this data based on data that was compiled based on this report of the fact that it, at build out, at the zone that it was created, what might be different based on what we're wanting to change it to.
so Madam Chair, the zoning is not what determines this. The socioeconomic data is based upon general plan as well as traffic patterns. So the zoning would have to be a significant change outside of what's within the general plan in order for the
That we were looking at was residential.
The data takes a look at the general plan to be a commercial, and
Look at is when we're getting information on these reclassifications for different, to change different zoning, is we're going to want to look at the comparison difference of what this model is right here in that particular block, then versus what is that impact going to be if we change the zoning from, say, commercial to residential.
well, Madam Chair, if we start to dig into each individual TAS and try and analyze that, it's going to lose the impact of the overall. And what this does is all of these work together in conjunction in part of a larger regional area and part of a larger master plan area, so that some changes that can occur here will be offset by changes elsewhere in there. And by and large, these projections will hold true for the corridor. And we find that these are projections that are used, this type of technique is used countrywide. And we do find that they're flexible in the way that they're built, but generally they are pretty good predictors of what the area is going to be in the socioeconomic conditions.
Not disagreeing with you in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that for my informational purposes, it's good to know that, because like I think the last meeting, we changed 3 or 4 different locations. if I'm not mistaken. So that could eventually change things down. And like, I don't remember which one of the commissioners had made a comment, that we need to really look at this to see what is the overall impact of kind of what we just did. Because we just changed, I think, 3 or 4 different locations. And how did we change all of this? That's what I'm trying to say, is we need to take that into consideration, that maybe, because you can only go by the data that you have, which is standard. I'm not disagreeing with you, but you're going by standard models and formulas that everybody uses across the nation. That's great. But again, I don't want us to compare us to everybody else when not everybody just changes 4 zones, right, in the same general location.
Right.
That's the only thing I'm saying.
Chair, if I may. Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
I think what we're trying to get at is we're seeing these TASs at many different sizes. And last meeting, to Madam Chair's point, we had changed 3, I believe, zoning or zones in one TAS location. We're seeing the region as a whole. Are we going to get into the presentation where we start to look at specific TASs and how we identify traffic pattern needs within a singular TAS unit?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, what I'm trying to illustrate with this is one of the components that goes into the long-range planning. I don't intend during this presentation to go deeper into the TASs because there's a lot more data that goes into determining what needs to be done for the region and for the road network. This is just one component of that projection that allows us to anticipate what the socioeconomic conditions will be in an area or could be in an area.
Okay.
And so unless you
If I may, excuse
significantly...
me.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sharp.
I do apologize. I know there's a bit of a delay, but to echo Commissioner Babb's point, I think this is getting a little too broad, and I think as a commission, what we're trying to do is narrow our focus to the core city of Maricopa and how the traffic patterns change and are manipulated by various changes we're making to the zoning code. So when we change from residential to commercial or vice versa, how is that going to impact traffic flow around a particular school or zone of schools as is indicative on Porter Road near Honeycutt? I believe it was Commissioner Irving who made the point, you have all of this traffic around schools and that impacts, just the flow and safety around that area. So while I appreciate the TAG maps and the regional data, I think it's very important. I think we really want to focus and narrow in on the core city of Maricopa and how our individual zoning request decisions have an impact on that general area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, Vice Chair, with your permission, I'll proceed with the presentation. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on the TASs because there's a lot more information that goes into making these determinations. Hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions, and if not, we can come back to any portion of it that you like.
I guess speaking to Commissioner Sharp, Vice Chair Sharp's question, I started to bring this up earlier. Almost, because there's a lot in the study, it's a great study, almost a matter of trying to cut through to what we really, this is great, but I think it's a matter of cutting through. Is there a way? Because I know one thing I looked at, you list the traffic flows like A through F, okay? I think what we were interested, is there a way to cut specifically, because I listed our traffic flow in that area as an F. Is there a way to cut, does that make sense, to cut through and talk about, projections are fine, but I think our issue is what can we do or change to make us not an F? I think that's what everybody's asking.
Absolutely.
Is there a way to do that? Again, this is interesting to me, but so what? That doesn't tell me how we're going to plan to help the traffic on Porter Road. That's all. And I don't know if there's not a way to do it, fine, but I think that's what we're saying.
And if I can if I can kind of just wrap this part up so that he can go on with the rest of his presentation. And it's going to give us some good basis and some foundation that we can build on down the line. I think that what we need to realize as a commission base is the fact that every situation, every night's meetings are going to be based on that. And I think that moving forward, one of the things that staff might want to do as we're looking at specific general changes is diving, like you said, Commissioner Reed, diving deep into that one specific area. Because I think that's really what this whole request was all about for us, was to understand the big picture is great, and how the numbers were derived is awesome to know as well. But I think ultimately we entrust that you're doing it the right way. But we just kind of wanted to know and want to know moving forward, how are we affecting this by the changes that we potentially could be making? I think that's kind of what we're all kind of getting at here. So let's have you just go ahead with your presentation, and if we have any questions at the end, then we'll kind
Sure, I will
of
try to
beat
get
you
that.
up later.
And Madam Chair and Commissioner Irving, I do want to assure you that we do dive into that. with
I know
each and
you do.
every traffic analysis that comes in. That is our job to dive into that, and we do ensure that we are taking all that into account. I'm just, as you said, trying to lay the framework so you understand sort of the background of this. Our area transportation plan is a living document. It was adopted in 2015, but it adopts and it evolves as the city evolves. So the next component to it, speaking of which, is the traffic impact analyses. And that, as you know, is for each site that's being developed. Everything that's coming in, we've got an analysis for that site. The land use for that site determines the traffic generated. That's based upon the ITE, the Institute of Traffic Engineering guides. That's a nationwide document with regional modifications to say a certain type of development is going to generate a certain amount of traffic. The next thing the traffic impact analysis looks at is the access design, which is to say your right in, right outs, your full movements, how many points of access they've got, and off of how many roads. That determines a lot in terms of your flow, in terms of your impact. They also look very closely at background traffic, and this is something that we dig into a lot when we're doing our analysis. What is the existing traffic on that road? What is the projected traffic based upon Maricopa Association of Government models for that road? What are the traffic counts that they're finding there? And then one of the things that we take a look at closely when those come in is adjacent developments and developments downstream, upstream of their location. What we look for when these are coming in is, are they recognizing existing developments, and are they recognizing anything that we're aware of that's in the hopper right now that has a traffic impact? And then the final part of their analysis is looking at the intersection based upon delays and queuing. That may determine that an intersection widening is necessary to improve a level of service. It may result in traffic signal installations or modifications, other traffic measures like roundabouts. These are things that are all explored in that traffic impact analysis and part of our review of that. Taking a look back now at the projected needs for the city. What is projected based upon the modeling, what is projected that we're seeing continue based upon the traffic impact analyses that come in, and how we address those. We have milestones within the area transportation plan. It also goes up to build out, as I've mentioned before. It addresses the capacity needs for the city, whether or not we need bridges, intersection changes, numbers of lanes. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is the second indented bullet point, railroads, washes, and native communities. This is a component that's a little bit, not unique to Maricopa, but unique within the valley to Maricopa, in that we are fairly geographically isolated. We have washes, we have railroad tracks that create an impediment. We have the Occitan community to our south, the Gila River community to our north, which means our north-south roads, our east-west roads terminate at a certain point. They don't continue on to the next city, with the exception of Maricopa-Cascaron Highway, obviously 347, and a few other exceptions. Most of them terminate before they reach city boundary. And so that makes a big difference in the type of roads that we need and the capacity that we need to be able to accommodate. And then these projected needs go into our CIP, and they respond to those by creating CIP projects to address these roads, widen them, pave them, do intersection improvements, whatever is necessary based upon that. This is an excerpt from the area transportation plan showing existing roads and new projects, just an example of. This is a 2030 projection of what might be needed. And then this is another, just a more detailed analysis based upon a table from the area transportation plan.
So
Yes.
on the traffic impact analysis, I know some projects will trigger a traffic impact analysis, others will not. Is there a point in time where you have so many projects in a specific area that don't trigger the traffic impact analysis that you review the area anyways, or traffic patterns to make sure that those smaller projects didn't have impacts?
Yes, Madam Commissioner, Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, we do in fact. Generally, the trigger is less than 100 vehicles in the peak hour or less than 750 vehicles per day. So they're fairly small impact developments that don't require traffic impact analysis. You could conceivably have enough within a concentrated area that would create that. We do look at that each time when one comes in. If a case arises, and one has not yet, but if a case arises in which we get enough concentrated in an area to do that, then we would have to do our own independent analysis of each of those to see if any modifications need to be made to the area.
Okay. And then your road projections you were showing for 2030. I'm assuming you look at those every so often based off of the developments coming in. Is there a cadence for review of road projects every year, every 2 years? What does that cadence look like?
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb. The projections here are from the Area Transportation Plan. They projected, it was adopted in 2015, they projected needs in 2030. This is just to give you an example of the types of projects that could come up. The CIP looks every year and sometimes multiple times a year to identify projects coming out. We actually start our process in about September for July adoption the following year, identifying road projects that are coming up that need to be done. And then those sometimes get modified throughout the course of the year, and we push projects off and bring other projects up based upon needs. So that is a constantly evolving process, a constantly evolving document that we base entirely on the needs of the city. The Area Transportation Plan gives us a broad guide, but we are focused in the weeds of exactly what's happening in the area and what needs to be addressed.
So just to be clear, you say it's adopted in 2015, but you change it constantly for the city of Maricopa, correct?
Yes, sir. It is an evolving document.
Okay.
It evolves as Maricopa evolves. An adopted document only happens every so often. As I said, this one was an update of 2008 document. Probably in 2022, we'll come back with another citywide study that will come up with another adopted document that will provide guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
I have two areas of concern, both falling under railroad service. Plan mentions that the Amtrak station is going to be closed and moved. Has that been part of the plan, or where are we at with that? Do we know?
So Madam Chair, Commissioner Yoakum, the Amtrak station, at the time this was adopted, there was a plan for relocation of the Amtrak station to the west of 347. At the time, it was because that was a large impediment to north-south traffic across the railroad tracks. Because of the overpass now, the impediment's no longer there. The requirement for the move is no longer there.
My understanding that that's not going to occur, is that correct?
So it is, yeah, it is not in our plan right now, in our 10-year or 5-year plan to relocate the Amtrak station.
One other question. The plan refers to the double tracking having been completed, and of course that would change traffic patterns and demands. But it's my understanding that the railroad is planning on having a third and yet a fourth rail eventually. And I'm just wondering, has anything that we have here include what effects might occur when we have that third track completed, especially at the rail crossings where 347 is fine because we have the bridge, but where we have the other rail crossings, if we have a third or a fourth rail, how's that going to affect traffic patterns, cars waiting, so forth and so on?
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Commissioner Yoakum, we have heard that there are plans for potentially a third and fourth rail with Union Pacific. Nothing concrete on those. We do recognize the possibility of that. This is something I'll come back to again later, but I will show you now. We show some potential grade separation crossings on this graphic here. Those are likely to change, exact locations of those, but that anticipates that as those additional tracks are put in, then the at-grade crossings become more difficult. It becomes more of an impediment for those. So the grade-separated crossings are what allow the continued flow through there. But we do recognize that that is an impediment to north-south travel through the city, and to a certain extent, east-west travel. So, now we're looking at level of service here, getting back to Commissioner Irving's questions from before. Level of surface really is intended to meet the demands, keep traffic flowing, and reduce the delays of vehicles on the road. The city of Maricopa, and really every city in the valley and most of the cities with which I've communicated in the past, all accept a level of service D as being an acceptable level. I don't want to get caught up on the lettering there, though. This is not a school grade, letter D. This is not almost failing. This is not you're going to have to take this again next semester. These are just letter assignments to them with graduated steps. Level of service A means you've really over-designed your facility and traffic's flowing way too freely. Level of service B, level of service C, these are good areas. C and D are the areas where you want to be. C is really an ideal. Any delay of 55 seconds at a signalized intersection is not significant when you recognize that a signal is on a 2-minute cycle. So a less than a minute delay is fairly acceptable. An unsignalized signalized intersection, stop sign, 25 to 30 second delay, I think you agree is not a huge delay as you're making your way through town. Where we start to get unacceptable, 80-second delay, that's a minute and 20 seconds. That's a lot to ask at any particular intersection. And then greater than 80 seconds, obviously, that is a failing intersection. That is the one instance in which the letter grade does apply. We do not want ever to get to an E or F, and an F is absolutely something that needs to get addressed. So if we find these situations are occurring, we find that we're getting those projections through a traffic impact analysis, that results in modifications, whether that's modifications to an intersection or requiring them to find an alternate point of access or something that's going to reduce the volume in that intersection. Yes, sir.
And I guess that's part of my issue, because if I look at F, the question I would ask you, it says volumes greater than capacity. What do you consider capacity? And somewhere else you had sections, and I'm mainly looking at Porter Road between Casa Grande and Honeycutt. What right now today would you say is the capacity, and how would we rate right now based upon what we know is going in there?
Well, I don't know the exact numbers of what's going on Porter Road right now. I don't know how many are in there, but I know that we are well below capacity on Porter Road. 4-lane arterial can comfortably handle over 20,000 vehicles a day.
I guess I'm responding to force flow. I just did a little map, and in that area, there are 7 schools with a population of 7,000 students. I drove that area like 3 times yesterday, and we just voted to put an apartment complex in there, which would enter in a little to the north of Sequoia and a preschool, and there's 2 exits. One, the exit to the east clearly needs some work done. So I guess what I would say, can we figure out and tell us, have we put, by what we've done here, ourselves in the F category, and what are some of the corrections we could do? Because it clearly says greater than capacity. So to me, somebody's got to tell me, are we greater or not? You gave me a number, but did that consider in that Monday through Friday, we have close to 7,000 students K through grade 14 between 8 and 4 interacting in that area, not even counting the 2 apartments we added. That's what I'm...
So if I may add on to that, Commissioner Irving, this measuring you do, what Commissioner Irving is pointing out is peak times where traffic is super hot, right? There is no doubt that throughout the rest of the day you drive down Porter and it's a breeze. That's like, hey, it's free and 4 lanes are wide open. Same with Honeycutt and White Park, or not Honeycutt, it is Honeycutt and White Park. That light, you don't need that light there most of the day, right? And that intersection is free and clear most of the day, but there are 2 times during the day when it is backed up way past 80 or 50 seconds, right? So is this level of service measured at an all-day metric, or is it an hourly metric, or how is that measured?
The level of service will determine, it's likely peak time. What it's looking for is the worst condition of the day, the worst hour of the day.
Okay, so it's looking for the worst hour of the day?
Yes.
Okay, so if we're measuring level of service at the worst hour of the day, then to your point, Commissioner Irving, some of those intersections on like Porter, Honeycutt, we should have out, you know, F not approaching F, in the F category. Do we have a view into what our current level of service is on each intersection during the peak hour of the day? Based off last year's numbers, not, you know, what we're experiencing right now because of the current coronavirus pandemic, but based off the traffic we saw last year.
Sure. So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Irving, Commissioner Babb, I don't have traffic count data for what's going on in Porter Road right now, and that's something that we can analyze. We do have data that is analyzed with each of the varying developments that want to come in. One of the things that creates a unique situation with schools is that it's not on the same peak hour as an apartment or a business, where you're going to have that morning peak and that evening peak, as opposed to a later morning and a mid-afternoon peak, which you get with schools. So they create they create offset peak times. So when you're addressing adding an apartment to that, you're not addressing the same situation, say adding another school along Porter Road. When you're addressing, if you had a series of businesses along there and then you're adding an apartment complex along there, then you're getting that same peak hour. So it becomes a different type of analysis to determine what that situation is going to be. Schools tend to be a unique challenge for cities, for all of us, all the time, because schools have drop-off pickup scenarios where it's a little slow coming in. It's not a flow of traffic. It's a stop and go. People coming in, dropping their kids off, picking their kids up. That last kiss goodbye, the run back and get your lunch from the car. All of these things create additional delays that can't really be accounted for in your standard analysis of this.
Well, I guess, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I guess because we can debate this, and I think you kind of got the picture of what we're talking about, but I guess the question that I'm having at this point is kind of what we had been talking about before, where Mr. Irving's little great map right there, I'm looking at it, it actually looks pretty good. You know, we've changed all of those things, so if staff puts together another quote-unquote change, let's say in the middle of one of those sections that we've already done, with all of this great work that's already been done based on the data compiled and everything, has all of the changes that we've already made been implemented into this in any way, shape, or form, or is the next request based on this document from 2015?
No, the document from 2015 is an overview that helps the city define, but the traffic impact analyses are going to be based upon the existing background traffic or pre-COVID background traffic. So when they come in and do their analysis, Madam Chair, what they're going to do is they're going to determine what was traffic volume at peak prior to the slowdown, or maybe at some point when we return to normal, if we return to normal, what is the peak at that time? And what is the impact of their individual development? How do they increase that? And that analysis will determine whether or not modifications need to be made to an intersection, or as I said, maybe there's a different route that has to be taken for them. And so we require them to go through that analysis, make those determinations, and then if there is improvement that needs to be done with that, assume the cost or a portion of the cost of that improvement.
So how do you determine, I'm sorry, I was just going to ask, how do you determine how much traffic flow is at peak? So how do you make that determination?
So Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, the determination is based upon an analysis of trips generated from a site, which is based upon a standard. So for a school, we know we can anticipate how many trips are generated from that site. From an apartment, it's a different setup. From a Walmart, it's a different setup. But each of them have a
Different
standard,
standards.
yes,
Right.
of what the trips are generated from there. And then there's the background traffic, so we
Right,
know
how do you
much is
determine the
there.
background traffic,
The
though?
background traffic is based upon existing data. We've got those counts from Maricopa Association of Governments. We do our own individual counts every couple of years to update and confirm those. And then they are required, when they're doing their traffic impact analysis, to go out and do their own counts to determine what the current conditions are.
Okay. So if we say approve on, for instance, on Porter Road, 3 or 4 smaller entities coming in that don't trigger that traffic impact analysis, they would not reflect in the city's background counts for 1 to 2 years.
Or longer.
No, Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, they would reflect in what we anticipate being out there. The actual counts, they would not, until they are functional and open, because actual counts require them to be moving there and traffic
Right.
coming in and out. But we can use those projections to put into our overall and understand what the impact is.
But
along
if
the
they
road.
didn't trigger a traffic impact analysis, then we wouldn't have projections.
No, Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, just because they have less than 100 vehicles during the peak hour doesn't mean we don't know what the anticipated traffic volume is from them.
Okay, so we still track that and
They
we
don't
still.
have to do a traffic impact analysis, a full-blown report that
Okay.
would address this, but they still tell us in their traffic impact statement, we're going to be generating 50 vehicles during the peak hour. And so that is part of our overall.
And we still track that and keep that in mind as we move forward with other projects.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me, I'm sorry, there is a delay, so Commissioner Sharp has been actually texting me. He's got a question.
Okay.
And so, Michael, go ahead.
So as you've been talking about this, a couple of things have been coming to mind for me, and the biggest thing touches on what Commissioner Babb I believe he was trying to get to, which is we're looking at site-specific requests. And if an applicant comes in and says, here's the traffic impact for my site, you guys take that information and you begin to aggregate it, and that's how you come up with these projections. But is there any point where you would look at a project and say, this will trigger X, Y, and Z, and therefore we are going to decline to give a recommendation, or it's going to trigger a deeper dive into the traffic analysis? Is there something that, because what I would hate to have happen is, from a zoning perspective, every box is checked, but traffic becomes a problem. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand what your role is in this.
All right, so Madam Chair and Vice Chair Sharp, yes. We do in fact track the information that's coming in from them. So I'm going to make sure that I'm understanding the question correctly. As they come in, if we determine that there is an impact to the surrounding area from their development, do we say no, or do we say that there are additional improvements required? Is that correct?
That is correct. What remediation steps do they have to take, and are those completely borne by the applicant?
So I'll answer the second part of that in a moment, but if there are remediation steps that are required from that, we do necessitate those. The question of whether or not it's entirely borne by the applicant depends on what those remediation steps are and whether or not it's part of a regional situation. For example, if they were to come in and suddenly their development necessitated a traffic signal, they would not necessarily bear the entire cost of that signal, but they would be required to contribute a portion of that, and then the city would make up the balance of that or draw from surrounding properties if they have already contributed to that. And then the city would then, under those circumstances, be responsible for the installation of that signal.
Would that be based off of the traffic analysis saying the fact that because of that project, it bumped it up over there, so the remediation would be then the street light, and that's why they would have to?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct.
I guess, let me give you two actual examples. A lot of us heard, and everybody in the city heard, about people who live west of White and Parker. I know I've been heading to school in the opposite direction, and up to 4 or 5 months ago, you could probably wait 15 minutes to get by. That's been corrected. But it took quite a period of time. Right now, we just approved the apartments, which is a great concept, behind near Sequoia. There are two exits. One is if you come out, you have to take, if you want to take a left, my issue would somebody prohibit that? Because that would just be insane turning south. The other one be if you exit to the west side, that one little street. We know, or we should know, that once those apartments are up and the schools are out, that's going to be impossible to get on Honeycutt. So are we going to wait until we have tons of complaints from people? I guess knowing what we know, what's the anticipation to maybe be proactive? If you've driven out to that area where we just approved their great apartments and you look, there's only one way in and one way out, right? The one way in is off of Porter. If you want to go south, how would you possibly then cut across the lane? Now, by Saddleback Elementary, you're not supposed to. You can only go one way. And I guess all I'm saying is, have we thought about to be proactive to already say, okay, we've got to figure out a way, once the schools have expanded, whatever, that we're going to put a stop sign there, stop light, or whatever, or are we going to wait till we get tons of complaints? I guess, to me, based upon the data, doesn't that help us to be proactive?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Irving, you have me at a bit of a disadvantage with regard to your specific analysis. I don't know the site off the top of my head to be able to say.
I'm just using those as an example. You could use it anywhere, not specifics, but if we know the Planning and Zoning Commission approved apartments on both sides, okay? Everybody should know that. I think, again, we know the date when they're going to be built out. We know the schools are already built out and have open enrollment. So knowing that without being specific, no matter where it is there a way to be proactive and say, oh, okay, we need to look ahead to say, once you leave those apartments, you can only turn right. Or once you leave and you're exiting the apartments on Honeycutt, you can only turn right. Just stuff like that is what yeah.
So if I can kind of help you, because I know that you're at a disadvantage, this kind of circles back around to exactly what I started this topic a few minutes ago on this thing. Really what I think everybody is trying to say is, with all of these specific things that we've put into play by approving them, we're causing these disadvantages of being able to turn this way or this to do this, and it's never going to be in that report. Hang on, Tim. Is never going to be in that report right then or right now, because of the fact that this is a report from 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. So back to my original question was, with all of these projects that we just put into play, knowing that each one of these will affect to some level, whether it's minute or whether it's large items, when the next one comes in, how is everything that we just approved compiled into this document so that when you go to review it for staff's purposes later, that you know that those effects are there? Because at this point, you only have this document, and those things that we just approved are not in there. That data has not changed in any way, shape, or form. That's where I think what everything that everybody's trying to say is, how are those specifics, not in generalities of turning left and whatnot, but those specifics of the number of trips, the number of cars going through at the peak time and the off time, how is that all placed into that for that next change?
I'm not expecting you to solve it tonight. I guess I'm just looking at process.
Right.
And is there a process to say, okay, they did this, that's all. So by no means solve it. It's just basically, can we assure ourselves, knowing this, that the process will start earlier? Because those apartments are going to be built.
Yes.
How do we ensure the fact that we are being proactive, like he said,
Proactive.
that moving forward, we're not having you needing to rely on old data, but giving you the ability to rely on new current data based on what in the last 6 months or the last year has happened in the city to ensure that you can give staff a better updated knowledge so that they're not standing here going, well, we just looked at the transportation report. No.
Yes.
I mean, that's, I think, what we're all trying to ask is how can we be a little bit more proactive for you?
Well, and Madam Chair, Commissioner Irving, I appreciate your questions and I appreciate where you're going with this. It is our responsibility to be proactive. And before these documents come before you, before Rudy comes up here or any of the other planners come to you and present these, we have reviewed this with that in mind. And one of the things I highlighted when we were talking about the traffic impact analyses is we look at background data, which is to say, what's on the road now? What's planned over here? What's planned over here? And we are very cognizant as we're reviewing, if we know something's coming up down the road here, upstream or downstream of this traffic, and it's not included in that analysis, we make them aware of it, and we make sure that it gets included in that analysis.
Okay, well,
'Cause
that's one point that we didn't actually hear. I don't think I did, at least I didn't, that you're looking at what's coming up.
Yes. And if we are aware of a project that is in the hopper, if we've got traffic data on something, or we know something's coming up, we want to make sure that that is part of the analysis, that we are clear, and we are trying, it is our foremost concern that we be proactive with this, that we not wait until we've created a situation that needs to be fixed, that we are absolutely aware of what's going on with that.
Commissioner Yocum, go ahead. Sorry.
Study looking at the population and housing numbers, estimated housing numbers. On table 5.4, you were projecting the 2020 population to be 56,360. And on figure 6-3, you're estimating the population to be 2020, 73,376. I know that you are constantly updating this, but which of those numbers are you using now? Where are we going with, and how the housing numbers seem to fluctuate the same way? The anticipated 2020 number is different on both of those charts. So how's that affecting your thinking in the overall planning?
Well, Madam Chair, Commissioner Yocum, those projections are from the 2015 adoption of that document. Obviously, there have been some changes. Things have slowed down in some areas and picked up in other areas, so they're not going to be accurate projections any longer. They tend to be a little bit conservative. I think, if anything, they tend to show that maybe the volumes that we anticipated along here are not achieved yet and may not be achieved by the milestones laid out and maybe won't be achieved by build-out. So that's just part of what the data was showing at that time based upon the growth rates we were seeing at the time that was in development. So I don't know about specifically those two charts and which one governs here without looking it up and going through the data. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can say that those are projections that help us inform the overall plan, but not how we address any specific individual development right now or how we address any traffic impact analysis that's coming in right now. That just gives us an idea of where we think we're going to be 2030, 2040, and future years, so we can anticipate the volumes along there and not undersize our facilities. And did I answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay. All right, if I may, I'm going to move on, but please stop me if you have any other questions. I'm going to walk
Say that 'cause
quickly.
we will.
I'm going to walk quickly through our roadway types. And this is the next thing that's determined both by the area transportation plan and by the traffic impact analyses. What type of roadway is required in order to facilitate movement of traffic? That's based upon also a general plan and what the necessity is there. So these are from the area transportation plan. We have taken these and modified them slightly for our design standards manual, which was recently adopted. This still shows the old one in your version here, but it gives you an idea of what the roadway type is. This is our parkway standard. This is a regional traffic mover. This is intended to get people from I-10 to 347 and everywhere in between. East-west corridor is an excellent example of what this type of facility will be. 6 lanes, it's got the very wide median because this has the indirect lefts, which is to say if you're coming in from a perpendicular street, you can't make a left onto this, you have to make a right, go up, make a U-turn, and go back down. It's also known as Michigan lefts in some regions. So it's a very wide median that allows those U-turns. One of the modifications we've made to this, you see the bike lane with a buffer on this graphic. We've taken those off the street and put them back by the sidewalk. So now they are separated by a landscape buffer and that curb and gutter from the vehicles coming through. So we did the same with the principal arterial and minor arterial as part of our standards. So you don't have bicyclists in the same area as the high volume traffic. Parkways tend to be very fast as well. This is our principal arterial, also a very large street. This is a 6-lane section, also 1 or 2 left turn lanes, sometimes right turn lanes. This is another one where we've taken, as I said, we've taken the bike lane off the street, put it back by the pedestrian so it's protected there. Minor arterial, this is what you find through most of the city and will through build-out. This is a 4-lane section with a median, with generally a center or a left turn lane, dedicated left turn lane, sometimes right turn lanes, decel lanes. Collectors, this is what all of our local streets feed into, and these feed then into our arterials. These tend to be north, south, east, west at half-mile loops, like around Rancho El Dorado. Village collector is a modification of the collector idea with on-street parking. This is going to be, we'll find these in more of the areas where we've got properties with 0 setback. We're trying to encourage the on-street parking and trying to encourage the more village development. I don't want to speak too much about that because I'll just show my ignorance. Rudy and Peter understand that way better than I do. And then these are our local streets. We have 3 different types of local streets in our standard now, a 60-foot right-of-way and a 50-foot right-of-way. 2 different types for the 60-foot. But basically, this is 1 lane in each direction. It may or may not have on-street parking capability as well. So looking at the anticipated roadway classifications, the long-term needs of Maricopa, what we anticipate these roads being based upon what we're seeing in the area transportation plan, based upon the data that we're continually getting through MAG and through our traffic impact analyses. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. This is incorporated Maricopa. On the left-hand side, you see the legend. Freeway planned up at 238. This is still ADOT's plan at some point, so we still reflect it within the area transportation plan. The parkway being 347 north and south, also being Maricopa Casa Grande Highway, taking that jog at White and Parker and heading along the Farrell Road alignment. That's the east-west corridor. Principal Arterial 1, Principal Arterial 2, not many at all in the city of Maricopa through build-out. You see Hartman Road projects being a little bit there. That relies pretty heavily on there being a grade-separated crossing there. Anderson Road shows being there, also relies pretty heavily on the grade-separated crossing, either of which are subject to change. Principal Arterial 1 shown along White and Parker also relies on the grade-separated crossing, but that is a likely component because it is part of the east-west corridor that is planned in the future. Everything else ends up being, all the other major roads in the city end up being a minor arterial, which is a 4-lane section. And that's all they're ever likely to be. And the reason, as I said before, is because they only go so far. You don't have the regional traffic coming through here. People from Casa Grande are not going to come up Maricopa Casa Grande Highway and hop onto Porter Road to go up to Smithbank to go over to 347 when they can stay on that, hit the east-west corridor and shoot right up the parkway. So, you know, you've all been in other cities, maybe you've lived in other cities where you see the massive streets. I've put them in myself, intersections 10 lanes wide, a right turn lane, queue jumper, bus queue jumper, 3 through lanes, dual lefts, and they're just massive intersections. That's because they've got the pass-through traffic that's going from south, all the way north through town, all the way up to Mesa, and all the way up to Scottsdale. And they have to have that. They have to have that capacity. We're not going to need that capacity here because we're not going to have that kind of flow through, not through incorporated Maricopa. Now, when we look at the planning area further south, which is not on this map, there will be areas further south and further east that have to get into the principal arterials because they will have greater distances that are traveled, which means more vehicles, more motorists coming onto them from various points along there and increasing the need for capacity. But this is where we're projected right now within incorporated Maricopa. The White and Parker also shows something that is no longer really part of the plan, but it's thrown out there every once in a while again, is the Hiller Road alignment. That's not something that's going to happen, which means the White and Parker may never rise to the need of principal arterial also. That concludes what I've got. If you've got any other questions right now, I'm happy to answer them for you.
I think we kind of beat you up already. Let me just go one at a time so that we can make sure everybody's got their questions answered. And I'll start out in telephone land. Michael, got any questions for him?
No, not any questions per se, just more of a broader comment. And I do appreciate you standing there taking the fire. We did beat you up quite a bit, and you're kind of in a tough spot, so I admire your courage. I think that what we're looking at is we're making these decisions on a site-by-site basis, and we're just really trying to make sure that we understand in the aggregate the impact that each one of these has. Because one site might come and it doesn't have an impact in isolation, but in the grander scheme of things, maybe it does. And I think it's that maybe that we're trying to answer. So some of the things that you highlighted here help us understand that a little bit. But I think that when city staff is putting together their proposals on site requests, planning, and zoning changes, zoning requests, I think it's just helpful for city staff to understand we're really looking closely at this now, especially as we begin to make more and more changes. So thank you for the presentation. I really do appreciate the information provided.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
We have our eyes on you. Sure, Yoakum. Any questions?
Just a comment, looking at section 9.2, expanded service, and we were talking about public transit. And the primary reasons being for roads, reduction of air pollution, better use of resources, and safer travel. And I think that we should try to emphasize that area as best as we can.
Commissioner Yoakum, thank you very much for that comment. We are very interested in emphasizing public transit. We're working towards a citywide public transit plan, but obviously desire for ridership, demand is what's going to drive whether or not and how, well, not whether or not, how quickly that moves forward. I do.
Limited by the parameters of demand, need and demand. I understand that.
Yes, but I do anticipate with confidence that a public transit system, a citywide public transit system, will be here someday.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, so I appreciate all that's gone into this, and I think one of the key takeaways is APT is more of a macro document, big picture, wide kind of thing. They use that as a tool to plan for the future, size these. A lot of assumptions that go into modeling. Career have been modeling one way or another, and you have to make these assumptions, right? But when you get down to it, a lot of times you have to go in and you have to ground truth those assumptions. In hydrology, we use stream gauges, to ground truth what's really happening in the stream. So that's where we really might have to sharpen the pencils a little bit and say, okay, here's what's really happened, And Commissioner Irving pointed that out. He was out there yesterday looking at this stuff. And, so, okay, the model shows one thing, but here's the truth. And I think that's just something we have to just kind of be aware of and watch. Because I am afraid of this cumulative effect is, what's going to happen overall as we move forward. We just have to make sure we're doing it. I don't know if you can tweak variables, if there's justification in your traffic models, that you can, just mess with the modeling parameters in there and just, okay, this is what it's showing, but based on what we see, let's make this little adjustment, something like that. So that'd be my only concern, is like really put in boots on the ground and see what's going on from that level. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
First off, I want to thank you for your time and coming out tonight. And thank you for putting up with all of our questions and definitely answering a lot of them. It cleared up a lot of questions I had around the traffic impact and how the city was looking at it. And just knowing that just because we have a traffic plan from 2015, it's always changing, does go a long way. I do have a couple of additional questions. First, is it you that puts together the section in the staff report that's about the traffic impact analysis, or?
No, Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, I am not the one who puts together that section report. Does that come from Eduardo?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we get the information from our reviewer, engineer reviewer, which Josh oversees. So that information is directly from our engineer division with modifications just to incorporate into the staff report itself. So direct statements are coming from our engineer reviewer.
Okay, because all of the ones I recall lately just have been saying that it does not trigger any additional traffic impacts, or so I would like to see that section expanded out. What is the impact? How many trips it's generating, and how far away are we from the next level of impact in that area? Just to give us, as a commission, an idea of how close is this bringing us to that next trigger point in that area, so that we have that going in, so that we can just see that, and then that'll help us stay informed. And that is my recommendation up in the staff reports.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Babb, are you referring to the next trigger point as into a next analysis report, or are you talking about as improvements to the area?
The next improvement that would be required to that street.
Josh?
Yeah, I want to echo that. I would like to see that beefier as well. I think Commissioner Babb makes a phenomenal point.
Yeah, I think what we're basically really, the underlining comment is really what we're trying to look at is, and it's again back to what I started the conversation on, what have we already done that's not data-driven, in the data-driven? What have we already done that's going to put us at that point with the next project that we're looking at? How far away are we from that? Oh my goodness, we're now at an F. Because I think, and I think I might be speaking for everybody, but I think we're concerned that we're going to start getting the backlash from everybody that we're not taking that into consideration as to how are all of the different projects that you just approved, and now you want to put this other one in here, kind of like going off of what that other gal was trying to say with, we need this and we need this and we need this before we do this. I'm really worried that we're not taking into consideration these 4 projects, for example, putting that into some sort of formula, and I'm just going to kind of, sorry, I'm overtaking you. Are you done?
No, I mean, you're putting it out very well. I was just going to add that roads are a very sensitive topic to people in Maricopa, especially with the 347, you know this.
Right.
So having that clear view of where we're at with the road, and then what's that next road improvement trigger point. So to Chair Higgins' point is we could show our citizens that we're taking that into consideration and we're seeing the full picture. Hey, we're not at capacity here yet. Here's where we're at, here's where we're going, and we're approving this, and that is part of the decision-making process. Yes, we realize that the city is already doing that, staff is already doing that, but having it part of the staff report, and so we review that, is is going to be key to also encouraging our citizens being engaged and knowing that the city is looking into it as well.
Well, and also remember, one of the things, building off of that, and where I was going with my comments is, we don't want to be viewed, this commission is sitting in a unique position in the sense that there's a lot coming at us. Staff is busy day in and day out with all of these requests, so we're getting I remember, and it's probably before some of you, I remember where we could go months without a meeting because there just was nothing. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, you better keep those two weeks a month on the calendar because we're going to need them. So this commission is at a point where we could be viewed, if we don't do our cards right, we could be used as just rubber stamping everything that the city wants. And I don't want that. I don't want my commissioners to have to sit there and look at, no, just because they say so, we're supposed to say yes. I don't want us to have to feel like we're rubber stamping. For staff's protection as well as for ours, by having that additional information listed on the staff report that this has been looked at, this has been reviewed, we have taken into consideration the last 4 years of information projects that have been planted, because yes, they're going to start being built, but are we going to have another one in 6 months before that other stuff is built? And did that all get taken care of? If it's in the staff report, that becomes public information, so therefore we're not rubber stamping it. We did look at that. We did look at what effects that it has. To Commissioner Frank's point, so then we're not necessarily totally manipulating the model, but we're refreshing the models based on the current information today to help you do your job, to make sure that staff is getting the right recommendation to us and that we're passing the right information to the council. Ultimately, that's who really answers the yes or the no's. We can sit and project yes and say yes or no, but they have more of a say than we do. So that's what my concern is, and I, just because of maybe doesn't mean it will. You know, so I want us to be able to look our constituents in the eye and say, we did the best that we could with the information that we were presented. I want staff to be able to say, we gave the commission the best information that we could based on all the relative data, not just the historic data, or not just the documents that have been approved by the citizens of Maricopa. All of those factors go into it. So, you know, I think what I'm hearing as an echo point is, and if I can take the lead and say, you know, moving forward, we would kind of really like to use Commissioner Babb's word, beefing up that section to make sure that everybody has that level of protection so that we can go home with a smile on our face at night because we feel good about that project that we just approved and not walk out of here going, oh God, what did...
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's something that we could work with our engineering division to somewhat enhance information when it comes to transportation analysis, part of staff reports, to any
Only
requests
gonna
going
protect
forward.
everybody down the line. All right, Commissioner Yoka.
Just to add to the general comments being made, I'm not nearly as active in going to large meetings because of COVID-19. I guess none of us are really as active as we used to be, but I do get together with 2, 3, 4 people at least once a week for a luncheon or whatever, and I'm constantly being asked by seniors and others, why aren't you folks watching these traffic situations, the congestion, especially on Porter, or where there's charter schools being built or where there's apartments going up? I'm being asked that. They know I'm on this commission, and I tell them that we are studying the issues and we are considering the ramifications, but the general comment they come back to me with is, you're not looking closely enough or deeply enough. So it just echoes what's been said by all of us.
All right. Thank you. Great work, and again,
Thank
sorry
you.
we had to beat you up.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, next item on the agenda, reports from commission and staff. Guys, get your calendars out.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I just have a couple of updates. P&Z Commission, our next, like you may have mentioned, Madam Chair, we are really busy, so August, the next meeting after this one is August 24th. That's where we'll be coming back to you with the text amendment for the yard and garage sale signs. Actually, before the meeting, I want to give you guys a first glance at the proposed changes, which will be on the city's website tomorrow for any public comment on those changes to garage sale signs. Also, we have a PAD amendment, or excuse me, a general plan amendment, a minor amendment for the Stonegate development. If you recall, the Stonegate development is just west of the Wells development. It's that large piece west of Stonegate Road and Maricopa Castle Garden Highway. Back in the day, before the recession, it was a big box retail center that's being proposed redesignation as a mixed-use development.
That was where Home Depot was supposed to go, right?
After that, for September 14th, it's September 28th, you may have gotten notice by our director of general plan major amendments, one called GPA Anglin and one called GPA McDavid Estates. That is on your P&Z Commission hopper for September 14th and September 28th. It's required by state law when it comes to any major amendments of the general plan to host two different P&Z Commission meetings at two different locations. So with the first one, September 14th, we'll be hosting it here at City Hall. The second one is September 28th, we'll be hosting it over at the Copper Sky Rec Center.
Those both Mondays? Yeah. 14th and 28th?
September 14th and September 28th.
Where that September 28th is Yom Kippur?
I'm sorry, say it again, Madam Chair.
That September 28th is actually Yom Kippur. I don't know if that's a major holiday, but calendars tell me it is. I know, that's what I'm saying. So,
What holiday is it? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yom Kippur.
Oh, I don't know if it's a actual,
Well, it's not a federal holiday,
Right.
it's a state, but I just don't want you guys to get any feedback.
we'll double check that, so, thank you. The other thing as well is zoning code touch-ups. This staff came to the commission, I believe earlier this year, to kind of get the initiation or blessing of the commission to do a zoning touch-ups. List a laundry list of what zoning touch-ups will be coming about. We are going to be moving forward, fast forward on that one fairly soon, so I think September, we may want to see a first reading of that one, and that includes the request we got at the last commission meeting regarding the notification lists, expanding boundaries from 300 feet to at least doubling it to at least 600 feet. So we're presenting some text amendment changes, including notification requirements as part of that as well. And lastly, staff sent over heads-up information that in Maricopa will be doing a general article for Kazi, kind of like tip of the hat for him. If you've seen that email, if you have any comments you want to provide to in Maricopa, please go ahead and email Raquel from in Maricopa, the editor, and she'll be more than gladly to someone incorporate, as we'll be doing some type of issue for Kazi in the September issue.
Done.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's all I have from staff.
No attorney, that means no executive session. We like that when he's not here. So with that being said, I will take a motion to adjourn if there's
So
nothing
moved.
else.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Bye, Michael.
Bye-bye. Take care.